From London tonight, I'm joined by Dilip Tahil, well-known actor who's been living in London for so many years. Dilip Tahil, thank you. Former BBC journalist.
Thanks,
Former BBC journalist and television veteran Parvez Alam is with me tonight. He's joining us from Delhi. He spent many years working in London as a journalist. Sohail Seth, who lives a large part of the year in London, is also with us tonight. He knows what's happening in the city and has been following it. Siddharth Varadarajan is joining us in some time. Now let me be very straightforward about it. You know, Dilip Tahil, how much of this is just plain and random acts of criminality and vandalism? And how much of it is a cocktail of economic and racial reasons?
I don't think it's sort of race orientated. I think it's a mixture of a general anger that is prevailing in most big cities today, and I think it has to do with several factors. It's difficult at this stage to say what if there is one reason for this, but it seems to be the peace is so fragile that it is quite shocking and quite tragic that it's escalated to this level. Having said that, it's I think it's if you're driving in the streets of London and you sort of make a small error, I mean, people are so angry. It's difficult to say if there's any one reason for it, but I think it's a whole sort of a host of contributing factors.
No, but there must be some trigger. There has to be some individual and unique trigger in a situation such as this, because it's not localized and it's spread in a way that everyone is completely amazed with. Parvez, what has been the trigger here? Why has it become so big?
Arnab, we can't deny the fact that Britain is going through a crisis of economy and other issues as well. Mervyn King, the Governor of Bank of England, just today actually announced a cut in the forecast growth from 1.8% to 1.5%. Millions of people are unemployed, and the Governor of England himself has been quoted saying that the UK is enduring the longest and the deepest freeze in the standards of life since the 1920s. So here we are talking about the serious economic situation. Now, that's the backdrop, of course, and we have been seeing some of these behavioral patterns during the last 15 years. Actually, we have seen some of these incidents, though in certain locations and not with such a magnitude. The fact is that that's the background. And the second backdrop is that Britain has also seen a lot of immigration. Now, I may be sounding a bit racist, and as you said, that politically incorrect as well at this stage. But the fact is that the assimilation, the cultural, the melting pot, all the multicultural, multikulti, as they say in German, somehow has also created a number of problems. The assimilation is not taking place due to various reasons. The politicians are exploiting it, and the Turks and the racists are also exploiting it. So that's also another reason.
No, but you see, now I have a figure here. I don't know if British politicians look at this, Sohail, but according to the latest statistics, half the black people, and now I'm really bringing this debate to the moot point, because I think Britain is extremely uncomfortable about facing the reality. The fact is, half the black people, Sohail, between the ages of 16 and 24 are unemployed. This is 250 to 300% higher than the unemployment figures in the same age group between white people. So there is something seething there, but I just want to know from you whether this statistic can be ignored given what's happening.
Go back to your channel in March 2010 when you and I were discussing the attacks on Indian students in Australia. At that time also there was a tinge of envy, there was a sense of hatred that these guys are coming into our country. In Britain, as Mr. Alam rightly said, the situation is slightly different. In the last 1 year, the Conservatives, ever since having come to power, have had to take some really harsh decisions on public spending, on cutting down welfare, on reorganizing the NHS. With all of that comes a lot of pain initially. A. B. We've been seeing across the channel, I mean within Europe as a continent, you've been seeing what's happening in Greece with the debt situation and the rioting that took place in Athens and in other cities. So the reality, Ornob, is that this is economically linked, but it does have undertones of racism which always existed but never came to the fore. Now the ones who are really racist have a reason to say that, look, we are only protecting our people first, because our people are losing jobs, our people are unemployed, and our people are being overtaken by other hard-working communities. I mean, there is a reality. When you talk about black unemployment...
But nobody's saying that. No, 1 minute. No, Sohail, nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's going on record saying anything like that.
I'm saying in England, Ornob, it is difficult to say black or, there's a larger reference to Asian communities, and then there's a reference to locals. Within the locals, again, there's a huge assimilation in terms of population. The reality is as follows. Britain has never been under so much of economic pressure as it is today. Unemployment is increasing, not declining.
Okay.
Growth is under pressure. If you look at London, it is inhabited more by Arabs than by the English. So they're slowly losing a lot of what they had. And the worst of all is their identity is under attack. There is nothing Londonish or English about London anymore. I mean, when you talk about Tottenham Court Road, I mean, Tottenham Court Road has an elegant restaurant on one end, and then it has hovels, and it has, ghettoization of the worst kind. And this is not restricted only to the so-called communities, areas that you and I know about. It's spread wide and far.
So this, I understand this point. So the point is, Siddharth, let me come to you, that Britain has been through economic and social decay over several years. And the argument, if I understood Sohail correctly, is this multiculturalism as cosmopolitanism, which London as a city likes to project, that beneath the surface are serious undercurrents of economic and racial tension that have been building up. Siddharth, is that in your view being reflected in what's happening today?
I would hesitate to emphasize too much or to characterize what's happening as having racial undertones, quite frankly. I know that the incident where 3 Asians were run over does suggest an element of racial targeting, but the widespread nature of the rioting that we've seen across England suggests that there is a different pathology at work. It's very hard to identify race through the grainy CCTV pictures that we've been seeing and photographs, but from what I've been able to piece together, you've had essentially kids, and I wouldn't say even lumpen, but I mean people even fairly affluent looking, but of different races taking advantage in an opportunistic way.
No, surely they do.
A bit like what we saw in Gujarat in 2002 when the rioting erupted, and you had the Pantaloons store, people driving up in motor cars to Pantaloons, and because it was owned by a Muslim franchisee, and robbing all his merchandise. So that so I'm saying that there is a very large element of opportunistic looting, fueled initially by obviously economic dislocation, deprivation, what have you. But I think I don't think this is a reflection of multiculturalism or the failure of multiculturalism or racial politics. It's essentially a breakdown of law and order which people are taking advantage of.
Well, can it be simply dismissed as a breakdown of law and order? That's really the point of argument here, because you can look at the statistics. Parvez wants to come in here. Parvez, I think you're rebutting Siddharth. Go ahead, Parvez.
Yes, I would like to respond to what Siddharth was saying. Initially, it started off as a kind of a protest, a very honest protest against the death of a person who was allegedly killed by the police. So that's the backdrop. But the second thing is the most important thing for us to consider is that what has happened in the last 10-15 years, that The population of the immigrants has gone up. That's one thing. Second thing is the population of people of Indian origin and Pakistani origin has also gone up. The third thing is that the people of Indian origin seem to be doing well in comparison to the people who come from the Caribbean communities, and there's a kind of an anger, an element of anger against the people, against the communities who are doing well. Now, it started off as kind of a very multicultural thing. There were white people, there were Asians, everything. But now what's happening during the last 24 hours, we are seeing some of these thugs and groups attacking the so-called communities that seem to be doing well. And this is the reason that lots of Asian communities, people, they are trying to defend their areas and shops, and these people are of Indian origin, of Pakistani origin, because they don't like this sort of thing.
So it's an economic riot. I see Sohail wanted to come in. I just want to make one point. Can we, we have statistics to show that the areas where the rioting is happening are among the most economically deprived in Britain. And then there are statistics which also show the most economically deprived sections in Britain happen to be the blacks. So can we delink the two? I mean, we also know there's a lot of squeamishness, Sohail, in Britain today about looking at this as even remotely a race issue. We know that certain channels almost blacked out when people came on certain channels and said that there were, racial overtones to the killing of Mark Duggan, the way in which he was shot, the way in which he was treated by the police. There's over-policing of the black community by the police. That I know that there's been self-censorship imposed in the name of editorial standards. Why this squeamishness? Is there too much squeamishness, Sohail, about accepting that, yes, there is a growing divide, there is an anomie, there is an alienation?
I think what Siddharth touched upon is no one, and nor did I in my initial remarks say that multiculturalism was a threat or was it a peril. The reality, Arnav, is that you've used an economic reason to drive home simmering underlying tensions that continue to exist in today's England.
Absolutely.
That is a reality. What is equally a reality, which Mr. Alam touched upon, is that this reality is fueled by the economic divide where the resident community or the local community, not the migrant community, actually believes that we are getting the shorter end of the stick. Now, how does this happen? This happens because everything has come at one shot. You used or you needed an excuse for what happened to Mr. Duggan and then created a spate of violence, some of which was pure roguish criminality. Now, I want to leave you with one thought, and I want your comments on this.
Yes.
The only branded warehouse which was destroyed in a fire was a warehouse belonging to Sony. And there was a boy who was interviewed on the BBC, and that boy said, I distinctly remember people going in, throwing crude petrol bombs and casting slurs on that particular community. Now, that to my mind is some kind of profiling. I'm not for a moment saying it is symptomatic of every person in England. But there is clearly...
Okay. You're getting a rebut from Siddharth.
That every Hindu supported a fanatic Hindu in Godhra.
No. What Siddharth is rebutting, you go at Siddharth, yes.
Arnav, I read a very fascinating account of the attack on fairly high-end shopping areas in London and Manchester, where the Bang & Olufsen store was attacked and torched and stuff looted. And the only shop left standing was Waterstones, which is a book chain. Now, I think we can draw any conclusion we like from this. The fact of the matter is that Britain is a society where the police, despite having allegedly paid attention to community policing and a more sensitive, caring, sharing sort of approach, is still not able to deal with civic disturbances and not able to win the trust of communities.
But here's a statistic.
You have the Mark Duggan
here's a statistic. Here's a statistic, Siddharth. I want Dilip Tahil to come in. He's been listening. The fact is, and I continue to make the point that our British people and the British government too squeamish about accepting that there are racial undertones to this. In the last 5 years, Dilip Tahil, the number I am told of black and South Asian people stopped and searched by the police has doubled to 310,000 people. The policing in certain areas inhabited
no,
by certain communities has been deliberately increased. Are these facts?
So it's extremely difficult to go into these statistics because I mean the policing is of a very complex nature because of the fabric of the communities that live in London and inhabit the UK. It's easy to say that it's got it's got to do with any certain community or it's a reason. I mean it's something that's triggered off, which is scary, is the fact that it didn't take much for this violence to get to the stage that it got to. I think it's difficult for me to understand at this stage as to exactly what the deeper reasons were, but obviously there are deeper reasons, and I do say that it's economics. The economic climate has got partially got something to do with it, obviously,